Good afternoon to you. 506 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Remember this by any chance?
I've asked her, the VP, today, because she's the most qualified person to do it, to lead our efforts with Mexico and the Northern Triangle and the countries that help. We're going to need help in stemming the movement of so many folks, stemming the migration to our southern border.
That's Joe Biden back in 2021 naming Kamala Harris the border czar for his administration. The media today is telling us that never happened. In unison, they're all out with articles. Axios today, Harris border confusion haunts her campaign. The Trump campaign and Republicans have tagged Harris repeatedly with the border czar title, which she never actually had, Axios says, now being hyper literal about her title. Time magazine reporting today, Kamala Harris was never Biden's border czar. Here's what she really did. Oh, she was just doing the old root causes. And USA Today, Harris's border work was on root causes of migration. She wasn't in charge, they insist. It's funny, though, if you look back at all those publications, you look back at the news media at the time, even they casually referred to Kamala Harris as the border czar because that was her job. Joining us now to discuss, Rob Law, Homeland Security and Immigration Director at the America First Policy Institute and a former senior policy advisor to President Trump. Sir, good to have you back with us.
Good to be with you today.
Rob, is your head spinning at all of this? Kamala Harris was the border czar up until 5 minutes ago, I guess. And that never happened, I'm told.
Well, it just goes to show you that the liberal media is in complete cahoots with the Democrat Party, and they think the American people are stupid. Kamala Harris has clearly been the border czar this entire time. Otherwise, you say, why is it all of a sudden today that they're changing their mind about this? If the record was wrong, they could have fixed it a year or 2 or 3 years ago. And yet everybody knows she was the border czar, and everybody knows that the border is wide open, that there is record number of human trafficking. The cartels have been enriched like never before. Americans are losing their lives and they're losing their jobs because of the Harris failure as the border czar.
Do you sense, as I do, that this is entirely a Kamala Harris campaign effort that's manifesting itself across the press? Because it strikes me as in no way a coincidence that a bunch of these news outlets all in unison are trying to get rid of one of Kamala Harris's single biggest liabilities at the same time.
Well, you're absolutely right. And that's, again, like I said at the outset, it just goes to show that we essentially have state media here in the United States, that all of these mainstream, so-called mainstream, media outlets, they are all singing the same song, being strung along by one political party. And it's always to cover for their failures. And the border issue is the biggest winner for President Trump. And it doesn't really matter who the Democrat is, but particularly when it was Joe Biden and now that it's Kamala Harris, they are the two biggest failures when it comes to opening our borders, handing over sovereignty to the cartels, and incentivizing mass asylum fraud. So this is completely a cover-up. They are trying to do damage control, but there's just no amount of spin that is going to offset the 3.5 horrific years that Harris and Biden are responsible for unleashing after inheriting the most secure border in our nation's history.
So let's pretend for a moment that the new spin is correct, that Kamala Harris's job was super narrow. It was only to talk to the countries of origin of all of these illegal foreign nationals and to get them to slow down all of this migration. How successful was she?
An abject failure. Every single year under the Biden administration has been a historically worse year than the previous year. They are responsible for the 3 worst years, and it'll soon to be the 4 worst years ever recorded. The 10 or larger individual months of it, there's no stemming of the flow. There's just absolutely no failure. There's no vision of success. This is a complete failure. And she's not even spoken to the head of the Border Patrol. To suggest that you have absolutely zero responsibilities, whether you want to be called the border czar or something else, you actually have to talk to the folks that have the boots on the ground. And the fact that you're not even willing to do this shows that you didn't think that there was a single problem with what was going on until now people care about you politically, since you've basically been enshrined as the new Democrat nominee.
Yeah.
This is a cover up, and hopefully the American people will see right through this.
Sure. And the fact that there's even any debate about this is so crazy. But it's also, I think, an admission by the media that she was a failure in the role. They're debating today the very literal question of, was her title border czar? Well, of course not. It's not your title. The president of the United States, we refer to as the commander in chief. His title is president of the United States. But if you're handed the entire border portfolio, we would rightly call you the border czar. The fact that they're debating whether or not it was literally her title kind of gives away the game, doesn't it, Rob?
Well, you're exactly right. And it also goes to show that there's not a single signature issue that they can point to instead and say, no, she was spending all of her time doing X.
Right.
And look at how great the American people are because of the efforts of that. Whatever she has been tasked to do, she has failed at. And the most glaring failure is clearly the border. And so this is an attempt to try to remove the border issue, from the campaign. And I just don't think it's going to work.
And I don't think, it won't work because the voters prioritize the border chaos as one of their most important issues. They don't like it. And that's the reason that the Harris campaign is sprinting as quickly as they can away from it. Today, in the White House press briefing, Fox's Peter Doocy did ask about Kamala Harris's history with the border being such a failure. And Karine Jean-Pierre, as she always so often does, in an ineloquent way, tried to say, actually, the border crisis is Trump's fault. She is sticking with this Democrat line that Trump actually stopped legislative solutions to this because an open, chaotic border is going to help get him elected. Now, I've never seen a Trump quote to support that claim. I've never seen a piece of legislation that would actually achieve that. I've never seen anything to support that conspiracy theory. Have you, Rob?
No, and this is just a common thing, especially out of, the press secretary, where, again, Biden-Harris inherited the most secure southern border. They took 94 executive actions in the first 100 days to dismantle everything that President Trump and his administration put in place. And they bragged about it until the American people started realizing all of the negative effects of open borders. And this notion that the Senate bill that was sort of talked about for a little bit was going to do something, there were so many flaws in that bill.
Yeah.
It would have allowed over 2 million illegal aliens a year to flood our country. It would have done nothing to end the asylum fraud. It would have done nothing to deport all of the illegal aliens that Biden and Harris have allowed into our country. So, no, this is absolutely ridiculous.
It would have handed out work permits to these foreign nationals who broke our laws.
They are doling out millions of work permits that are taking American jobs. Harris, just looked at her Senate history. She called for abolishing ICE. She wants to protect criminal aliens. It's really remarkable how radical her policies are when it comes to the border and immigration, collectively.
Yeah. So today, one other thing that Karine Jean-Pierre said, and my default position is that she's usually lying to me. If she says something, I don't believe her. She said today that illegal crossings have dropped by 50%, I think was the number she used today. I do know, as we talk to immigration experts, that because it's an election year, it does create some interesting occurrences. In other words, they try and slow things down just enough that the public doesn't freak out quite as much as they have been. And I think Mexico has been playing a role in this too, right? And insofar as the Mexican president has agreed to try and slow some of this migration down, at least for the election year, and then plans on opening things back up later. What do you make of all of this? What's happening now?
Right, and this is a great point. So you say down 50% from what? And what they are not telling you is that they're saying 50% down from the worst numbers ever recorded that they are responsible for.
Right.
And so you say, well, how about in isolation? Let's look at what those numbers are. Those numbers are exponentially higher than what occurred under the Trump administration. So they are still failing. They're just maybe not failing as horribly. They're also only talking about the numbers that the Border Patrol agents are apprehending in between the ports of entry. What they are not telling you is that this administration has directed illegal aliens to show up at the ports of entry, and they basically schedule their unlawful entry, and then they claim that that is a lawful pathway. That is just illegal immigration that is organized.
Yeah.
So again, they're fudging the numbers in that respect as well. And to the role of Mexico, I think that Biden and AMLO absolutely came up with some sort of a corrupt bargain. Biden held off on his executive order until just after the elections that were a gigantic success for AMLO's party. And it seems like AMLO in return, and we don't know what else they were promised, has done a little bit to slow things down. Again, there's no reason to think that this is a long-term thing. This is just enough to keep Democrats in charge because they've clearly, paid off AMLO's party going forward.
Yeah, I remember that. We never really got a resolution to that. Tony Blinken went down to Mexico and had some sort of secretive meeting, and we were never really told what was given in exchange for Mexican cooperation on stopping some of the inflow.
It seems like a corrupt bargain, and if the American people continue to allow a Biden-Harris type of policy to manifest, I guess we'll find out, but it's definitely not going to be for the good of our national sovereignty and our national security.
So FBI Director Christopher Wray testified today before the House Judiciary Committee and was asked about some of the terrorists and the people on the terror watch list who keep crossing into our country and the Border Patrol encounters. And he made, I think, a good point today about the problem that we as a country face here, which is that most of the people who are coming across the border, certainly the types of people who would be on terror watch lists, they're not telling you their actual name. They don't have identifying documents. So when we talk about people who are captured who are on the terror watch list, that's just among the very few people whose identity we're able to ascertain. It seems to me, Rob, we've got a much bigger problem here in terms of threats to the country coming across the border than we're even able to detect.
Well, you're absolutely right, because what's not captured in the border numbers is an estimated 2 million what are called gotaways, those who evaded the Border Patrol. And those are your clear national security and public safety threats. And you say, how do you know that? Well, it's never been easier to surrender yourself, be quickly processed and released, being connected with NGOs who use American taxpayer dollars to put you on a plane, train, or automobile to your destination to feed you, clothe you, and house you. Who is not going to take advantage of that situation? The type of people that don't want to have any involvement with law enforcement. And so, yes, there's a serious threat on the national security and public safety angle. It's not just economic migrants that are making fraudulent asylum claims to take American jobs. There's very much a safety element to this as well.
It's huge. It's a big problem. And the Harris campaign is working feverishly to make you not think about it. Rob Law, thank you very much from the American First Policy Institute. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Of course. All right, that's Rob. We will check in now with Ed Rodriguez, and then back to you with more information and your calls. Should take some of your calls today. That'd be good. 888-630-9625. All right, let's go to the phones. Line 7, I got David calling in from Virginia now. David, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir. Go for it. What's on your mind, David?
I just wanted to piggyback off the last caller that you spoke to in reference to the border issue and the terror and all this and that.
Yeah.
My question is the violence and terror is from the people that's already been here.
What do you mean?
You know what I mean?
No. What? Gun violence, you said?
Any type of violence is from people that's already been living here. It's not people coming from the border.
Well, you're aware that plenty of awful crimes have been committed by foreign nationals who've come into our country illegally. Just this year alone. I mean, what are the names that come to mind? Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungare, 12-year-old girl in Houston who was raped and murdered by 2 Venezuelan nationals who were in the custody of the Biden administration and then released into our country and then inflicted that awful attack on her. Those are real crimes that have actually happened, David.
And that's by people coming from the border.
Yeah. So you're right when you say that we do have people who commit crimes in this country, violent crimes. But additionally, we've got chaos going on right now inside of our country as a result of illegal foreign nationals coming in and doing harm. Now, does every illegal foreign national who comes into our country commit a violent crime? No, of course not. They commit a crime, 100% of them do, by breaking our law coming in. But the fact is, Jocelyn Nungare would be alive today if the Biden administration didn't release those illegals into the country.
And that's your point of blaming Vice President Harris for that.
Well, Vice President Harris's job was to fix it, was to stop all of these illegals from pouring in. And what happened with that, David?
But how can she fix it when there's bipartisan on both sides?
What do you mean?
It takes a team to make it work. You can't just blame the Democrats for everything. It's a party of congressmen, right?
It's a party. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. Biden comes into office.
I'm saying it's.
But
I'm saying what is the remedy of the problem? You keep saying it's Democrats' fault for not doing this. What kind of solution does the Republican have?
To secure the border. It's right now, David, the law is that the border is to be secured. Biden came into office and opened it up. Do you know how he's spending your money right now, David? By trucking people all across the country at your expense to take your jobs, to hurt your people, to upend this country. That's not order, that's chaos. And they made a decision to do that. They have abandoned the laws of this country, and it's a real shame. And if the voters do it the right way this year, they will hold these people accountable, and that includes the border czar, Kamala Harris. Hold on. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You know, it's crazy outside of Union Station. Have I told you? We talked to Richie McGinnis earlier. They're burning American flags, the pro-Hamas lefty group. They're burning American flags. They replaced the American flag up at least one or multiple flagpoles with Palestinian flags. They're burning effigies of Benjamin Netanyahu, according to Richie. He said he saw that on the ground. And just a moment ago, I saw a video of these pro-Hamas people grabbing park police officers by their bulletproof vests and dragging them across the ground. The cops being assaulted by the crowd. Completely out of control at Union Station. I look forward to Merrick Garland leading an aggressive prosecution against all these people. That'll happen, right? Yeah, not holding my breath. Wild, wild, wild. Let's take a call now. Teresa calling in from Olney on line 7. Teresa, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, Corey. I'm sorry. Hi, Vince.
Hi.
I wanted to dovetail off of the caller that you just spoke with.
Mm-hmm.
He was saying to you that, why are you blaming Democrats for all of this? And, well, they did. They caused this. They literally said that, Mayorkas was in a congressional hearing and said that they reversed all of the Trump policies.
Immediately when they came in office. Remember when Biden was running in 2020, he, in his own Biden-esque way, said that he would encourage people to immediately rush the border. Do you remember that? Rush the border. And they took him up on the offer, didn't they?
Yeah, they totally did. And they love him. They wear his T-shirts coming in. And so I hope that guy continues to listen to the station. I didn't get his name, but
it was David, right? Was that the name? Yeah, Corey's confirming to me that the man's name is David. He sounds like, based on the way he was speaking, what he stood for and the fact that he was standing up for Kamala Harris kind of reflexively, he sounds like a Democrat. He was a little unnerved. He felt like we were picking on Kamala. How dare you? Don't pick on Kamala. Why are you blaming her for all the border problems? And he said, we've got our own problems here in the country. We've got all this crime that's already taking place in our country already, which, by the way, I agree with. It's all the more reason why we don't need any more problems. Isn't that right, Teresa?
And he seemed very surprised when you listed all of the victims. He did. Who were, totally surprised.
He did, and that was the part. That was the moment I realized that this wasn't just a put on. That he really was. Yeah. He was like, wait a second, who are these people who've been killed? And that was all because of the border. And so his follow-on question was, and unfortunately we ran up against the news break, but he was like, well, wait a second, I've been told that it's Congress's fault that it's this way, that it's Republicans too. It's not just Democrats. And the thing he's being told by MSNBC and CNN is that a piece of legislation that was put forward that James Langford, for some unknown reason, signed on to, and Mitch McConnell was pushing, that would have solved our border crisis. That is not true. That is a lie that's being sold to the American people. It was an amnesty bill. It was handing out work permits. It was creating new thresholds for illegal immigrants to pour into our country, and then to say that's normal. That is not what you want. I don't care if you're David calling in. I don't care where you are in the country. I'm telling you, this is not what you want. And insofar as Congress has responsibility here, they do. I don't want to completely exonerate Congress here, but the presidency matters. They've got laws on the books. They should enforce the border. But what Congress should do immediately is pass nationwide E-Verify. They should pass laws that help the president do this job. And that is not what this Congress has attempted to do at all. That has not been the case. And the reason you're seeing this border inflow like you have during the Biden years is because when Biden comes into office, as Teresa's pointing out here, in the first 100 days, he takes 94 executive actions that open up our border, open it up. And you got people pouring in who are saying, thank you, Joe Biden. Thank you, Joe Biden. And that's because they are giving credit to Biden as they walk right into the country. Remember that the famous Griff Jenkins audio? Maybe we could find it. But that Griff Jenkins is standing there on the border early in the Biden administration, and you've got people pouring in, and he goes, why are you here? He goes, Joe Biden, I'm here because of Joe Biden. Would you have come if it was Donald Trump? No, I wouldn't have come if it was Donald Trump. Well, that tells you everything, doesn't it? And yet here we are. And today, I cannot emphasize enough, the fact that you are seeing all of the legacy left-wing news outlets in unison saying Kamala Harris was not responsible for the border at all. She wasn't the border czar. She wasn't the border czar, they say. The reason this is happening today is because the Harris campaign is making that happen. They are desperate to run away from this issue because they know it is their single greatest liability as far as policy issues go. Now, Kamala Harris has her own problems in front of microphones and talking to people one-on-one and trying to figure out how to interact with them, to have human conversations. It's a real challenge for her. She's deeply insecure and deeply dumb. So those are big problems for someone when they're trying to communicate with other human beings. But as a policy issue, she's been an abysmal failure. She's been the face of that failure, and she can thank Joe for that. In fact, do you remember all of the news stories that came out after she was named border czar by Biden? The resentment she had about that? The anger that she was being stuck with the tough problems? How come I'm being stuck with this? This is dragging me down. I don't want this border issue. We had all sorts of palace intrigue around that. Now we're pretending like it never happened. Now, border czar? What? What are you talking about? And so today, here's a perfect example. Axios has this piece up today. The Trump campaign and Republicans have tagged Harris repeatedly with the border czar title, which she never actually had, says this July 24th, 2024 piece. That's today. But then I go back to Axios, March 24th of 2021, and the piece says, Biden puts Harris in charge of border crisis. So what am I to make of all of this? In fact, Axios, in its own coverage, on April 14th of 2021, referred to Harris as the border czar. They didn't attribute it. It wasn't a quote. It wasn't somebody else. They say this: the number of unaccompanied minors crossing the border has reached crisis levels. Harris, appointed by Biden as border czar, said she would be looking at the root causes that drive migration. Now Axios says she's never been the border czar. So, you know, this is quite literally what George Orwell wrote about in 1984. This is the whole concept is don't believe all of the stuff that you were told before. In fact, don't even remember the stuff that you were told before. Just think differently now, and make that the way you think about this issue forever, until we change it again. Until we change it at literally any given moment. Pretty good, huh? Let us see here. Donna calling in from Frederick, as she does, line 8. Donna. David was who called. Donna's calling now. Donna, hello.
Hi. I want to piggyback off of what Teresa was saying. My heart went out to, I believe it was David that called in. And first of all, I want to welcome him. It's a big tent on this side, and I think he'll find a new home where he can really understand the Great Awakening, because that's a process we're all going through, and it's hard. And I want to remind him that he can look up the SAVE Act. And when you see how
Smart.
that was voted upon,
Smart.
it will tell him everything he needs to know about who has America's best interests at heart.
Exactly right. So right now,
simple.
so people understand what Donna's talking about. Right now, it is a matter of law that you have to be an American citizen to vote in federal elections. And that should be true all the top to bottom. It should be true in municipal elections too, although lefties are trying to change that all across the country to allow foreign nationals to vote in municipal elections, to include illegal immigrants. And so what the Congress advanced earlier this year was something called the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act would make it so that when you register to vote, you have to prove your citizenship. It's a simple thing. When you register to vote, you have to prove you're an American citizen. In other words, you're eligible. And that's a good way to safeguard your vote because it means illegal foreign nationals, or even legal foreign nationals for that matter, won't water down your vote. That's important. It's meant to protect that franchise, not to disenfranchise you from voting. Guess who voted in favor of the bill? Republicans. Guess who voted against it? Almost uniformly. I think some Democrats may have joined Republicans on this bill, but not very many. Democrats almost entirely, at the very least, voted against this thing. And that tells you a story, doesn't it, Donna? If Democrats are voting to allow illegal foreign nationals to vote in our elections.
Yeah, and I think it was 4 Democrats that weren't with
Who crossed the aisle.
Yeah, and I'm not saying all Republicans are saints. Lord knows we've been through enough with their amnesty bills and all this garbage we've dealt with too.
Totally.
But if I were to pick the better of the two parties in the uniparty sphere, it's definitely the Republicans. So
long as these are the options, that's the correct way to assess it. Thank you, Donna. I always appreciate your call. Good to hear from you today.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Donna. I'll tell Bongino you said that. Jay is in Virginia now on line 7. Jay, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Colonnade Show.
Hey, good afternoon, Vince. I appreciate you taking my call.
My
Long-time listener. In fact, I listen to pretty much as I can throughout the day, all sorts of social media, some of the news outlets that you just mentioned, and I definitely listen to WMAL.
Cool.
I want to encourage, I think his name was David.
Yes.
I asked him to not go running back now because you're asking questions. I've been there. And when you find out the truth, when you do your own research and you actually do what some of your callers have said and you find out the truth, it's going to be eye-opening. And it's going to be like the myth of the cave coming out, seeing the daylight for the first time, and all the lies that you've been told in the past.
Plato's cave.
You're going to see them. You're going to see them. Yes, thank you. You're going to see them for what they are.
Yeah.
And if another bit of encouragement I give him is, look at the world through a biblical lens. Stop looking at the world through the world and what people would tell you, and look through it through a biblical lens, and you will see truth for what it is, and you'll see lies for what it is.
Well, that's clarifying. That's great advice. So, Jay, you would recommend, for David's sake and anybody else who's listening, perhaps for the first time, stay locked in on WMAL?
Oh, definitely. I have it with my cup of coffee, with the first show in the morning with Mr. O'Connor and company, Chris Plant, if I can. I have a full-time job, so if I'm on my break, but generally when it comes to your show, I'm leaving work and I get to hear most of it. I'm actually on leave today, so I've been listening to everything that has been going on, and it's amazing how this, and I tell David, there's a force behind all of this. We call it the deep state. The Bible calls it satanic, and it is designed to take us out of the way so that what the world wants to do, they can do it.
Yes.
And so I hate to drop all the biblical references.
Please don't hate that for a moment. Don't hate that for a moment. It's excellent. And there are always, it's true. It's like, as you navigate through life, and if you raise children, you have to teach them to figure out how to navigate this. There are going to be forces who try and take you away from what's good for you. And as they do it, they will often use deceit to attempt to get that job done, won't they, Jay?
Yeah, they will. And I'll say one last thing, and then I'll get off because I know others want to call. But biblically speaking, since you gave me permission, is Jesus said it, Paul said it, in the last days, deception would be key. It said Jesus actually gave us the responsibility to see that we're not deceived. And Timothy, Paul said Paul said in 2 Timothy to Timothy, his spiritual son, he said, in the last days that people will be deceiving and deceived.
Love it. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate your call. Really do.
No worries.
There he is, Jay in Virginia, giving David some encouragement here on the program. I really appreciate that. You know, it is wild to see what's happening. We're keeping an eye on Union Station, where there's been all sorts of American flag burning today and assaulting police officers. Dennis in Annapolis is calling in on this subject right now. Line 4. Dennis, good afternoon, sir. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Yes. I'm really getting a little sick and tired of these traitorous, wacko kook Palestinian protesters burning American flags. I think some patriots ought to show up with Palestinian and Hamas flags and burn them right in the presence of the Palestinian protesters. I also think that, you know, if you have some gays for Gaza present, maybe a pride flag needs to be burned. I mean, I'm not trying to encourage violence, but it's so unbalanced.
Just to demonstrate how ridiculous this whole thing is. Yeah, and the people there are, of course, very emotionally incontinent. So they burn American flags, but if you were to, say, go out there, Dennis, and light up a Palestinian flag, that's when, of course, the mob would turn on you and start treating you like a park police officer, dragging people around by the collar. It's dangerous what they're doing. And, you know, we see some Americans going in there. You see in UNC, you see the frat bros, they get in there, but they protect the American flag. They'll stand up for what's right. Today we saw there was a lawyer who ran into that crowd, grabbed the burning American flag and pulled it out, ran it out of there to try and protect what was left of it. But here we are as we're watching, once again, chaos be delivered to our streets and on historic monuments.
Can I make one more comment about David, the caller, David?
Sure.
Yeah. He doesn't seem to realize that these murders and rapes that occurred as a result of illegals doing so to some American citizens were preventable. They were entirely preventable if we had good border control. And,
it's not every day that you can say there's an obvious way to have prevented a murder, is there? And in this case, it's crystal clear that was preventable. If we enforce the laws on our border, then those women would all still be alive, Dennis. You're right about that.
And not only that, you alluded to this. You're stretching the resources of the police, so now they got to solve crimes, domestic crimes, and then they got to solve crimes committed by illegals,
by foreign nationals too. Yeah. You're right about that. Thank you, Dennis. Excellent points, all of them.
Hello there, Vince. You're a good man, and I like the way that you maintain your cool. But
Thank you, brother.
I really would like to see. I would like to see those federal authorities and police and prosecutors pursue these lawbreakers the way they did the January 6th people.
You know what? I love this idea, Paul. That's right. We need a congressional committee all the way through Election Day at the very least, going after who's funding all these Hamas protests that are destroying so many things, attacking cops in the country. And while you're at it, how about an assassination attempt committee? Let's get one of those up and running. How about a border chaos committee? How about concentrating on the issues that matter to the American people? The great one, Mark Levin, up next.